Now that we've come to the point where we're going to add sewer nodes on page 1-17 in our manual, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the sewer node dialog. Sewer nodes are a little bit different than water nodes in the fact that sewer nodes is where we actually place elevation on the nodes, therefore determining the pipe help us to determine the inverts of the pipes coming in and out of the nodes. So we place a top and bottom elevation on the sewer node. Another unique thing about sewer nodes is the fact that we can auto-locate sewer nodes along a line. In water nodes, you just individually place them at specific locations that you determined. In sewer nodes, we can actually auto-locate them and place multiple sewer nodes in one pass. So I'm going to choose the auto-locate option. I'm going to use the default naming ID and click OK. Now I'm going to turn my attention to sewer line number 1. I'll start with that line and place nodes on there. Now, similar to water nodes, we need a pay item because we are plotting a cell at the location where the sewer node will be in the file. So the plan view graphic will come from a pay item, and I'll simply just click the calculator icon, which will put me into my DDB file, and I'll find my pay item folder, wastewater utility folder, and manholes. I'll choose the appropriate manhole, highlight it, click OK, and it will populate the item ID field. As far as location, you can see that we have tabs: elevation, sewer lines, loading, location tab along the bottom of the sewer node dialog. So we got a little more to set up on a sewer node than we did on a water node. First things first though, the location, we want to locate these along sewer line 1. So either choose sewer line 1 or we can ID it graphically in the file. We can place these nodes at the critical points. That's one option. That means everywhere there's a vertex along these elements, it'll place a node. So the beginning of the line, the end of the line, the end of the arc on this side. Furthermore, if we wanted, we could set a node interval. So we could place nodes every 50 feet or 100 feet or whatever you may desire. And we can also take an element and divide it up evenly. So for example, maybe I choose to place these every 200 feet. Well, it will divide this element up into as close to 200 feet increments as possible. If not 200, then it would use something just less than that to have them evenly spaced along that element. In our case, I'd just like to do critical points. So I'll potentially get 3 nodes placed. The elevation, we can set the elevation of the top of the manhole to the ground surface or the design surface. Or maybe I know the elevation, I can key it in. In our case, I want to use the design surface. And it's going to pull that surface from my project preferences. So underwater sewer project preferences, I recall a terrain surface called design, and in this case the model. Now to set the bottom of the manhole, I have a range option where I can key in a min max depth, and it will use that to determine where the bottom elevation will be. So it gives it an envelope, if you will. So using the min max depth, for example, 4 for min, 12 for depth max, along with my preference on sewer lines of a minimum slope of 0.5, it will come up with the best design it can, staying in no shallower than 4 at a slope of 0.5 between, if it can. Other options are depth, so I want them to all be 6 feet, 8 feet deep. Elevation, so I know the bottom elevation, I can just key that in. In our case, we're going to use range. I want to align the pipes coming in and exiting out of any particular manhole. I'm going to set their alignment to the top. So the top of the pipe coming in the manhole will match the top of the pipe going out. We also can match the inverts, the center line of the pipe, or you can have us design a drop. So if we need to drop the exit pipe, we will. Or maybe you have a certain amount of drop that you want to maintain through any particular structure. You could come in and key that in. Again, that would be in master units. So at this point, I don't need to worry about sewer lines. That simply would just show me on any particular node what other sewer lines connect to that node. In this case, none at this point. In loading, I'm not going to do sewer hydraulics, but if we did, this is where I could set up the loading for each particular node. I could say none. I could say supply it with a gallons per day. I can have it scan for services or set up a unit. Again, turning your attention to the project preferences under loading, we had options to set up effective flow unit rate, a peaking factor, and tell it to scan for services. So if I have scan for services on, then I can say look up and down the pipe for services and use the loading on those services. I can set up a unit. It would, for example, 1, and it would use the effective flow unit rate times 1. Or I can say supplied and just key in my gallons per day for that particular node, or none. So next, I'm going to click apply, and it will place the sewer nodes on that sewer line. At this point, you can see I can add another node. I could go back and scroll back and modify a node. Change its location if I need to. And you can see if we're adding nodes one by one and we don't do the auto locate option, then we have the same icons that we did on the water line or water node dialog to set them in begin station, end station, key in place, or dynamic place. So you can add one node at a time if you want. Turning our attention back to the manual, we're going to do the same process for the next 6 lines. So we're going to place nodes on all 6 lines using the auto locate option. That will be next.